Welcome to another deep dive. Today we're looking at something pretty interesting, industrial waste management in Singapore.
Right, a city-state half the size of London, but they produce more hazardous waste than many larger countries.
And yet they still have pristine waterways, so clearly they're doing something right.
Exactly. We're going to explore just how they manage this. We'll be looking at a recent article from CNA,
CNA?
Channel News Asia. It's a major news outlet over there.
Gotcha. So what's the scale of this problem we're talking about?
Well, according to CNA, Singapore processes something like 500,000 tons of hazardous waste each year.
500,000 tons.
500,000 tons. And it's growing, too, by about 10% annually.
Wow, 10% year-on-year growth. Is that normal for industrial waste?
Well, Singapore's rapid industrial growth is definitely a factor, but what sets them apart is their proactive approach.
Oh, so they're not just reacting to the problem as it grows.
No, they're really trying to get ahead of it and prevent things from escalating.
So give us a sense of what we're talking about here. What exactly is this waste?
This isn't your average household trash. We're talking about some seriously hazardous materials like spent heavy metals from manufacturing.
Like what?
Lead, mercury, cadmium, these can build up in the environment and become really dangerous to both humans and wildlife.
Right, and it's an island nation, right?
Yeah.
So water must be a major concern.
It is, absolutely. Imagine these things getting into their drinking water. That's why they've developed what they call a multi-pronged approach.
Multi-pronged meaning.
It's a mix of strict regulations, advanced treatment facilities, and being proactive so they can prevent contamination in the first place.
So they have strict regulations. What does that mean? Are there actual consequences for breaking the rules?
Oh, yeah, big time. Their National Water Agency, PUBI, really enforces things. They have a zero-tolerance policy when it comes to illegal dumping.
So no slaps on the wrist.
Nope, we're talking about big fines, even jail time in some cases.
So it's not just talk. They back it up.
Oh, yeah. It makes it very clear that environmental protection is serious business in Singapore.
Okay, so strict regulations, but the article also mentioned something about incentives. What's that all about?
Right, so it's not all stick. They have a carrot, too. The government gives companies incentives to switch to more sustainable practices.
Like what kinds of incentives?
Things like tax breaks, grants for green tech R&D. It makes these practices more attractive to businesses.
Smart. So good for the planet and potentially good for their bottom line.
Exactly. Win-win.
I like that.
Yeah.
The article also mentioned a company called Environmental Solutions Group Holdings. What do they do?
They're a great example of a company helping other businesses manage their waste responsibly.
Okay, so they handle the waste for them.
Right. Things like collection, treatment, and disposal. This lets companies focus on their main work while knowing that someone's taking care of the waste properly.
Interesting. And what about this case study with Applied Materials? They seem to go above and beyond.
Oh, yeah, they did. Applied Materials actually built their own treatment plant.
Wait, really? Why not just use a service like that other company?
Well, the water they use for manufacturing has a pH level that's outside PB standards for discharging it directly.
So they have to treat it anyway.
Right, but they get more benefits by doing it themselves. Like they can recycle the treated water to cool their buildings, which saves them water overall.
Interesting. So environmentally sound and financially savvy.
Exactly. They saw an opportunity and went for it. Now, beyond industrial waste, the article also talked about construction runoff.
Oh, right. What's the issue there?
Well, especially during monsoon season when rain mixes with all that exposed earth and soil at construction sites, it creates a silty discharge.
Uh-huh. And that's bad because...
It can clog drains and pollute the waterways.
So it's not just deliberate dumping they need to worry
Well,
about.
it's these accidental discharges, too.
And how are they handling that?
PB has stepped up inspections at construction sites and increased the penalties for repeat offenders. But they're also trying to highlight best practices.
Like who?
The article talked about China Communications Construction Company Sino-Hydro Joint Venture.
What are they doing?
They have this holding pond to filter the runoff before it's released.
Interesting.
And they've even automated it. If the silt level in the pond gets too high, the system shuts down so no contaminated water can escape.
Wow, so they're really on top of it. It sounds like Singapore isn't just setting rules, but actually helping companies meet those standards and even go beyond them.
Right, it's very much a collaborative approach.
So we've covered regulations, treatment facilities, proactive measures, and companies taking the initiative. Out of all this, what stands out to you the most?
I think it's fascinating how Singapore is tackling this from all angles. They're not putting all their eggs in one basket, but using a whole range of strategies.
And it seems to be working.
It really does. They've kept their water clean and protected their resources while still having a booming industrial sector.
Singapore's success really seems to come down to their strong regulations.
Absolutely. Regulations are key. They really make sure everyone's held accountable, for what they do to the environment.
And those regulations have some teeth.
They do, yeah. The penalties for breaking them can be pretty hefty.
Like, how hefty are we talking?
Well, the article gave an example. If a company is caught dumping hazardous stuff without pub's permission.
PB being the water agency.
Right, right. So if they get caught, they could be looking at a minimum fine of $40,000.
$40,000. Ouch! That's not messing around.
Yeah, they're serious about this. And it's not just fines either. The government also tries to encourage good behavior.
Oh, right. The incentives you mentioned earlier.
Exactly. It's a mix of carrots and sticks.
So what kind of carrots are we talking about?
Well, it depends. It can be tax breaks. It can be grants to help with R&D for green technology.
So they're not just punishing the bad guys. They're also rewarding the good guys.
Yeah, that makes sense. Right.
It does. So is this working? I mean, the article did mention they prosecuted 90 offenders.
That was between 2017 and 2023, yeah.
So are a lot of companies breaking the rules?
Well, it's hard to say for sure. It shows pub is actually enforcing the regulations and catching people, but it does mean some companies are willing to risk it.
And what was that, about 70% being repeat offenders?
Right. That's a bit worrying. It suggests that for some companies, the punishment might not be enough to deter them.
So maybe the potential profits from illegal dumping are worth the risk of getting caught.
Yeah, it's possible.
That's a tough problem to solve.
Yeah.
How do you change the mindset of a company that puts profits before the environment?
It's not easy, but I think education is key. The more people understand how important it is to protect the environment, the more companies will feel the pressure to do the right thing.
So it's about creating a culture of responsibility.
Yes, exactly.
The article also mentioned something about the government developing guidelines to help companies manage risks from extreme weather. What's the connection there?
Well, as climate change gets worse, we're going to see more extreme weather events, things like really heavy rain, flooding. These events can make the problem of waste runoff way worse.
So it's not just about preventing deliberate dumping, but also being prepared for accidental releases.
Exactly. That's what these guidelines are for. They'll help companies take steps to reduce the risk of spills and leaks, if there's a big storm or something.
Okay, so being proactive and adaptable is important.
Absolutely.
So Singapore is using education, regulation, proactive measures. It sounds like they're doing everything they can.
It does seem that way, yeah.
It's pretty impressive. I wonder what other countries could learn from them.
I think there's a lot to learn, not just about the specific technologies or regulations, but the overall mindset.
Yeah, this idea of making sustainability a priority. Not something you think about later, but an essential part of economic growth.
Right. And Singapore has proven that you can be both environmentally responsible and economically successful.
It gives you hope that we can solve these problems, if we have the will to do it. That automated shutdown system for the holding pond, it was a great example.
It was so simple but effective.
It makes you wonder what other solutions are out there just waiting to be discovered.
That's a good question.
This whole deep dive has given me a lot to think about.
Me too.
Before we finish, though, I want to go back to what you said about changing mindsets. This idea that we need to move away from this profits over the planet way of thinking.
Yeah. We need to get to a place where sustainability and economic success aren't seen as opposites.
Exactly. But how do we make that happen? It seems so overwhelming.
It is a big challenge, but I think it starts with individuals. The choices we make every day, as consumers, as investors, they all matter.
So you're saying we all have a role to play?
Absolutely. Even small changes can make a difference. If enough people start demanding sustainable products and holding companies accountable, it can really start to shift things.
It's like that quote, be the change you want to see in the world.
Exactly. And remember, change takes time. It doesn't happen overnight.
So we need to be patient and persistent.
Exactly. It's a marathon, not a sprint. But if we work together, I think we can create a better future for everyone.
Well, on that hopeful note, I think it's time to wrap up this deep dive. Singapore's approach to this whole thing is really inspiring.
It is. They're really leading the way, aren't they? Showing that it is possible to grow your economy and still be responsible.
It's funny, when we started this, I thought we'd mainly be talking about landfills and recycling.
Yeah, it's gone way beyond that, hasn't it?
It has. We've been talking about innovation and responsibility and finding ways to benefit the economy. A&D the environment.
Exactly.
It's amazing how they've turned all that industrial waste into something positive.
Right. Instead of being a problem, they've made it an asset by investing in these advanced treatment facilities.
Which lets them reclaim valuable resources and even create clean water,
Yeah, it's almost like alchemy.
turning something harmful into something useful.
Exactly. It shows you don't always have to look at things in just one way.
It's all about perspective and finding creative solutions. Speaking of which, that automated shutdown system for the holding pond was brilliant.
It was such a simple idea, but so effective.
It really makes you think what other simple but effective solutions are out there.
Who knows? But they're out there somewhere.
Well, this deep dive has definitely given me a lot to think about.
Me too.
Singapore has shown us that we can face these environmental challenges head on.
And they've done it without hurting their economy. In fact, you could argue their focus on sustainability has made their economy even stronger.
It's a great example for the rest of the world.
It really is. It proves that we don't have to choose between a healthy planet and a strong economy.
We can have both. And that's a message everyone needs to hear. So to everyone listening, keep learning, keep asking questions, and keep pushing for a better future.
Because the solutions are out there. We just have to find them.
Any final thoughts before we wrap up? Anything you'd recommend to our listeners who want to explore this further?
Well, maybe start by looking at what your own community is doing about industrial waste.
Yeah, look at what challenges they're facing and what solutions they're using.
Exactly. It's easy to focus on the big global picture, but
Yeah.
sometimes the most impactful changes start locally.
Right, and you never know. You might find some interesting local initiatives that you could get involved in.
You might. It's a good reminder that we all have a part to play in making things more sustainable.
Whether it's staying informed or supporting businesses that are doing things the right way, or just reducing our own waste. Every little bit counts.
I completely agree.
Well, on that note, I think it's time to wrap things up.
Sounds good.
Until next time, keep diving.